The battle had been fierce. On the once thriving planet of Xyloria, the sounds of explosions and blaster fire echoed through the air. In the distance, the towering ships of the Zarkori Empire hovered, blocking out the light. They had come to destroy everything. Their forces had already wiped out most of the planet's defenses. The people of Xyloria had no choice but to fight back, but they were losing. Amid the chaos, there was one survivor, Yara, an alien girl who'd been wounded in the fight. Her body was covered in deep cuts and burns, and her breathing was shallow. She had been left for dead by her people, abandoned on the battlefield as the enemy closed in. Yara had always been different. She wasn't like the others of her kind. Her blood carried the secret of an ancient power that could either save or destroy entire civilizations. It was a power that her people had kept hidden for centuries. But now, that secret was slipping away, as her life quickly faded. The once vibrant planet of Xyloria was no more than a broken memory. Captain Marcus Trent, a human soldier from a nearby fleet, had been on a routine mission when his ship was struck by an enemy missile. His crew was lost, and he was left stranded on the planet's surface. The crash had left him with little hope of escaping. Yet, as he wandered through the desolate landscape, he stumbled upon something that changed everything. There, lying alone on the battlefield, was Yara. She was barely conscious, her life force hanging by a thread. Her alien features were striking: sharp eyes, a silvery blue skin tone, and long, dark hair. But it wasn't her appearance that caught Marcus's attention. It was the strange glow coming from the deep cuts on her body, as if something within her was trying to heal her from the inside out. He knelt beside her, his heart racing. This was not a simple rescue mission. The power inside this girl was something beyond his understanding, something the Zarkori would stop at nothing to control. "Hang on," Marcus muttered under his breath, as he carefully lifted her into his arms. He could feel her faint pulse, but he knew time was running out. He had no idea where to take her, but he knew he couldn't leave her here. As he carried her away from the wreckage, he heard the sound of Zarkori soldiers closing in. They were searching for survivors, and Marcus knew that if they found him with Yara, it would be the end of them both. He needed to move fast. The Zarkori had no idea what Yara was. To them, she was just another alien casualty. But Marcus knew better. He had heard whispers of the power that certain alien species possessed, but he never imagined he would come across something like this. Yara stirred in his arms, her eyes flickering open. She gasped for air, struggling to speak. You shouldn't have saved me." Marcus was confused. "What do you mean?" "You're dying." Yara closed her eyes, her voice weak but urgent. "I carry a power that could end the war. But if it falls into the wrong hands..." Her voice trailed off as she fell unconscious again. Marcus's mind raced. What power was she talking about? And how could it possibly end the war? He didn't have time to think about it. The Zarkori were getting closer. His best bet was to reach the hidden resistance base deep in the mountains, where a few survivors of the rebellion had been gathering. They might have answers. And maybe, just maybe, they could save her. But as Marcus moved deeper into the wilderness, the weight of the situation pressed down on him. The Zarkori were relentless, and they would stop at nothing to capture Yara. He could feel their eyes on him, even from a distance. Every step was dangerous. The path was rough and treacherous, but Marcus pushed on, carrying Yara through the thick brush and narrow ravines. He thought back to his training survival tactics, escape routes, how to stay undetected. But none of that prepared him for this. The idea of protecting an alien girl with the power to change the fate of the entire galaxy was beyond anything he had ever imagined. Night began to fall, and the temperature dropped. Marcus knew they had to keep moving, but he also knew that the longer they stayed out here, the more likely they were to be found. His mind raced with thoughts of the Zarkori, of what they would do if they caught up to them. In the dead of night, as the stars shimmered above, Marcus stumbled upon an old cave hidden beneath a rock face. It was barely visible, but it seemed like their only chance. He dragged himself and Yara inside, sheltering them from the harsh winds outside. As he settled her down on the cold stone floor, He looked at her face, pale and still. Her breaths were shallow, and he could hear the faint hum of energy pulsing from within her. What was this power? How could a single person carry the fate of an entire galaxy? His thoughts were interrupted by a distant rumble. It wasn't thunder. It was something much worse. Zarkori ships were closing in on their location. Yara was still unconscious, but Marcus could sense that the time to act was running out. If they didn't leave now, they wouldn't survive the night. He looked at her, determination in his eyes. We're not finished yet. I'm getting you out of here. The tension in the air thickened as Marcus prepared to make his move. The fate of Yara and perhaps the galaxy rested in his hands. Would he be able to protect her from the forces closing in? Or was this the end of the line? The planet Orvath had been silent for centuries. Once a thriving hub of trade and technology, it was now a forgotten world, covered in dust and overgrown with thick jungles. The Federation of Planets had long since abandoned it, considering it no longer useful. But for Sergeant Jack Rios, this old world had become the last place he wanted to be. Jack was on a routine scouting mission. He had been sent with a small team to investigate an old space station believed to be abandoned. The mission was supposed to be simple: check for any signs of enemy activity and report back. But nothing ever goes as planned in war. As Jack's team made their way to the station, they were ambushed by a group of alien mercenaries. They fought hard, but the enemy was too strong. One by one, Jack's team fell. The only thing Jack could do was run. Running led him deeper into the jungle, away from the battle, and further from his ship. Hours passed, and Jack, now alone, wandered through the dense trees. His communicator was damaged in the attack, and he had no way of reaching his command. All he could do was keep moving and hope he stumbled upon something that could help him survive. That's when he found her. Hidden behind a crumbling wall of an old building, barely alive, was Lyra, an alien girl. Her body bruised and cut, with strange markings on her skin that glowed faintly in the dark. She looked like she had been there for days, maybe weeks. Her face was pale, and she struggled to breathe, her chest rising and falling in uneven gasps. Jack hesitated. He was a soldier, trained to fight and survive. But he wasn't a doctor. He couldn't help her. Still, something pulled him closer. Perhaps it was the strange feeling that something about her was important. Kneeling beside her, Jack could barely make out the words she whispered. "They will come for me." Jack's instincts kicked in. He knew he had to get her out of there. But who was she? Why was she in this condition? And why did it feel like he had just walked into something much bigger than a simple mission? As Jack carefully lifted Lyra into his arms, he noticed her eyes bright and sharp, despite her weakness. There was something powerful in them, something ancient, as if she knew things beyond what any human could understand. It wasn't just the way she looked at him, it was the way she seemed to feel the weight of his presence, as if she had been waiting for him. "Who did this to you?" Jack asked softly, moving through the jungle, trying to stay hidden. Lyra's lips trembled as she managed to speak. "The Krylons. They are hunting me. I hold a secret. The galaxy doesn't know." Jack furrowed his brow. Krylons? He had heard of them, ruthless mercenaries who sold their services to the highest bidder. But why were they after an alien girl? "What secret?" Jack asked, his voice filled with concern and curiosity. Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, her breathing slowing as if the question took all her energy. "The weapon. It's hidden inside me. The power to destroy worlds or to save them. I don't know how to control it." Jack stopped dead in his tracks. A weapon? Hidden inside this girl? The galaxy was at war, and everyone was looking for a weapon that could change the course of history. But Jack had no idea how this girl, this injured, fragile alien, could be the key to such power. "Where do I take you?" Jack asked, his mind racing. The situation had just become far more complicated than he ever imagined. Lyra opened her eyes again, locking her gaze with his. "There is a hidden base. In the mountains. The only safe place." Jack knew the mountains she was talking about. It was a dangerous, uncharted area perfect for hiding. But it also meant that they would have to move quickly. The Krylons were relentless, and if they were after her, they would stop at nothing to find her. As Jack carried Lyra through the dense forest, the weight of their situation became clearer. He was no longer just a soldier on a simple mission. He was now the protector of someone who held the fate of the galaxy in her hands. But the real question was, could he trust her? Could he trust the power she claimed to possess? Hours passed, and the jungle grew darker. Jack's mind raced as he thought about the danger they were in. The Krylons would be hunting them, and if they found them, they wouldn't hesitate to kill. He needed a plan, and he needed it fast. Suddenly, he heard a noise behind them. A branch snapped, and then another. Jack spun around, his hand instinctively reaching for his blaster. In the distance, he saw figures moving through the trees, dark shapes, too far to identify. The Krylons! Lyra, still weak, raised her hand. "They are close," she whispered, fear in her voice. "We have to keep moving." Jack didn't need to be told twice. He broke into a run, his heart pounding in his chest. Every step he took, he knew they were getting closer to safety, but they were also getting closer to their enemies. The mountains were still far away, and the Krylons were closing in. As Jack ran, he realized something. Lyra was the only chance they had to survive this war. And yet, he had no idea if he could protect her from what was coming. They were being hunted. And the only thing more dangerous than the Krylons was the secret that Lyra carried inside her. The battle for the planet Valcora had been long and brutal. For years, the Zarkan Empire had ravaged this once beautiful world, leaving it in ruins. Cities burned under the weight of war, and the land was scarred by endless conflicts. The people of Valcora had no hope left until they discovered her. Her name was Alara, a young girl with strange abilities. She was an orphan, living in a hidden cave with a group of survivors. But Alara wasn't just any girl. She had a gift that could either save the universe or destroy it completely. And right now, she was dying. Her body was weak. Her skin was pale, her breathing shallow, and her heartbeat irregular. The poison from the Zarkan soldiers' weapons had spread throughout her body, and no one knew how to stop it. Time was running out. Captain Jason Hayes, a soldier with the human resistance, had been fighting on Valcora for months. His unit was among the last of the survivors, desperate to stop the Zarkan Empire from taking control of the entire galaxy. But when he learned of Alara's condition, he was sent on a different mission, one that would change the course of everything. Jason had heard rumors about a girl who could heal the dying planet. Some believed she was just a myth, while others thought she was the key to saving Valcora. But no one knew where she was, and no one knew if she could truly heal a world that had been destroyed by war. When Jason finally found her, it was not what he expected. She lay in a dark cave, surrounded by the remnants of her people. The air was thick with sadness, and the only sound was her labored breathing. Jason had seen death many times in his career, but there was something different about this. Something in the air told him that Alara wasn't just another casualty of war, she was the last hope of the universe. He knelt beside her, his heart racing. "Alara, you have to wake up. The universe is dying. You're the only one who can save us." Her eyes fluttered open. She looked at him with exhaustion, but there was something ancient in her gaze, something beyond her years. "I can't. I don't know how." Jason's voice softened, desperate to help her. "We can find a way. We have to. The galaxy is falling apart. The Zarkan Empire won't stop until everything is destroyed." Alara tried to speak, but a cough racked her fragile body. She closed her eyes for a moment, gathering what little strength she had left. "I have the power to heal," she whispered. "But it's too much for one person. I don't know if I can control it." Jason's mind raced. He had heard stories about Alara's ability to heal, stories that had seemed impossible. They said she could repair entire planets with a single touch, that she could bring life back to worlds that had been abandoned by hope. But now, in front of him, it was clear that she was struggling just to stay alive. How could someone with such power be so fragile? "We don't have time," Jason said, his voice firm. "We need to get you to the heart of the planet. There's a place where your power can be unlocked, where you can heal everything." But we need to move quickly. Alora's eyes widened. The core of Valkura? It's dangerous there. If the Zarkans find us, Jason shook his head. The Zarkans are already here. If we don't act now, they'll take over everything. The galaxy is depending on you, Alara. Alara looked at him, fear and uncertainty in her eyes. But I'm dying. How can I save anyone when I can barely save myself? Jason took a deep breath, trying to calm the fear rising in his chest. Because you're the only one who can. The energy you carry is the last chance we have. You have to believe that. The two of them moved quickly through the shattered landscape of Valkura, the weight of the mission hanging heavy on their shoulders. As they traveled, Jason kept his eye on the skies. The Zarkan ships could appear at any moment, and when they did, there would be no escape. With each passing hour, Alora's condition worsened. Her breathing became more ragged, and her skin grew even paler. The poison from the Zarkans was spreading, and Jason feared that if they didn't reach the core soon, she would be lost forever. Yet, despite her condition, she never gave up. There was a strength in her, an inner fire that refused to die. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the heart of the planet, a massive, glowing crystal buried deep beneath the surface. This was where Alora's power was supposed to be unlocked, where she could heal Valkura and maybe even the universe itself. But the moment they entered the chamber, a loud, thunderous noise filled the air. Zarkan soldiers, led by their ruthless commander, General Koroth, stormed the entrance. They had found them. "We have to hurry," Jason said, drawing his blaster. But Alara, despite her weakened state, stepped forward, raising her hands toward the glowing crystal. The moment her hands touched the crystal, the ground shook. A blinding light erupted from the center, and Alara's body pulsed with energy. Jason shielded his eyes from the intense glow, unsure of what was happening. Then, everything stopped. The light faded, and the air was still. Alara stood there, her eyes closed, her body glowing with an ethereal light. Jason looked around in disbelief. The planet was healing. The fires that had consumed Valkura for years were gone. The air grew cleaner, and the ground, once cracked and barren, began to bloom with life. Alara's power had done what no one thought was possible. But the danger wasn't over yet. General Koroth and his forces were still closing in, and they would stop at nothing to capture Alara. She had just healed a planet, but the question remained, could she protect it from the forces that wanted to control her power? The Shadow Syndicate was an organization no one dared to speak about. Hidden in the darkest corners of the galaxy, they controlled everything from weapons trade to political power. No one knew their faces, their names, or how they operated. That was until Sophia came into their lives. Sophia was just a regular girl. At least that's what she thought. Raised on a quiet planet, she lived a peaceful life, far from the chaos of war and crime that filled the galaxy. But her life took a sharp turn when she accidentally overheard a conversation between two strangers at a local bar. They spoke in hushed tones, but their words burned through Sophia's mind like a fire. The syndicate is ready to make their move. Sophia didn't know what they were talking about, but something in her gut told her that this wasn't just a conversation between two criminals. It was something far bigger, something dangerous. The next day, Sophia was walking home when a strange figure appeared in front of her. He was tall, with cold eyes and an unsettling calmness. He wore a black cloak that seemed to swallow the light, and his presence made the air feel heavier. "You heard too much," the man said, his voice low and threatening. Sophia froze. Her heart pounded in her chest. I didn't mean to. I didn't understand what they were saying," she stammered, trying to back away. But the man didn't move. He took a slow step toward her. "The syndicate doesn't like loose ends. And you've just become one." Before she could respond, another figure appeared behind the man, this one more menacing, his face covered with a mask. He held a device in his hand, something Sophia had never seen before. It hummed with energy, and she could feel its power even from a distance. Sophia's mind raced. This was it. She had stumbled into something that wasn't just dangerous, it was a matter of life and death. But before she could act, the masked man activated the device. A flash of light engulfed her, and then everything went black. When Sophia awoke, she was in a different place, a dimly lit room with no windows, and the only source of light came from a strange, glowing orb in the center of the room. She was on a cold metal table, her body feeling numb, her head spinning. "Where am I?" she whispered to herself, panic creeping into her voice. A soft voice echoed from the shadows. "You're safe for now." Sophia turned her head to see a woman step into the light. The woman was older, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to see right through her. She wore a long coat with strange symbols on it. "You're with us," the woman continued. "The syndicate won't stop until they find you. They know you heard their plans, and they'll come after you, just like they've done with everyone else who knew too much." Sophia's mind was racing. "What do you mean knew too much?" the woman sighed. "You overheard a conversation that wasn't meant for your ears. Now, you're marked. They want to silence you, erase you from the galaxy. But you're more important than you know. You've learned something they didn't want anyone to know." Sophia's heart pounded. She didn't understand. She was just a girl from a small, peaceful world. How could she have heard something that was so dangerous? But the woman's eyes were serious, and there was no doubt in her voice. She was telling the truth. "Who are you?" Sophia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "My name is Cassia, and I'm here to help you. But we have to move fast. The syndicate is already looking for you. And once they find you, they will stop at nothing to make sure you never speak a word of what you overheard." Sophia nodded, but her mind was racing. What had she overheard? What did the syndicate want to keep hidden? And why was she, of all people, the one to hear it? Suddenly, the door to the room slid open, and a group of men entered. They were dressed in black armor, their faces covered with dark visors. The air around them was thick with a sense of danger. "They've found us," Cassia whispered, her face turning pale. Sophia's heart raced. She had no idea how to fight, how to survive in a situation like this. All she wanted was to go home, to forget everything she had overheard. But it was too late for that now. The syndicate was coming for her. Cassia grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the door. "We have to move quickly. There's no time to waste." Sophia's mind was spinning, but she followed Cassia without question. They ran through the dark hallways, the sounds of footsteps echoing behind them. Sophia could hear the voices of the syndicate soldiers getting closer, their footsteps growing louder. "Where are we going?" Sophia asked, out of breath. Cassia didn't answer immediately. She only looked back, her expression grim. "We need to get to the archives. If we can get to the files, we might be able to stop the syndicate before it's too late. You're the only one who can help us now." Sophia didn't know what to think. She had never been in a situation like this. She was just a girl who overheard something she wasn't supposed to hear. But now, she'd become the key to stopping a dark force that threatened the galaxy. The pressure was too much. She wasn't sure if she could handle it. But as the chase continued, Sophia realized one thing: she might have known too much. But it was the only thing that could save them all.